Hey, listeners. It is summertime, and even if you're staying local, I hope that you get a break. And if you are hopping on a plane to go somewhere, I think we can commiserate, right? I feel like we are holding our breath when it is time to head to the airport these days. Nothing about flying feels as predictable as it once was. You have to navigate those lines, you have to figure out if any of those security rules have changed and make sure that your flight hasn't been canceled. And when you do finally get to the gate, you hope that you're not stuck sitting next to that guy. There is always that one guy shouting about a work project on his phone for everyone at gate H11 to hear. Yes, Brad, your project is late, and we get it. That said, add a transgender family member to your trip, and the stress and concern of making it to your seat on the plane just rises. And then again, when you get off the plane, and basically, you are concerned about your loved one until you get all the way back home. Welcome to Straight Wife, Trans Life. I'm Lisa. Let's talk about air travel and destinations with a transgender family member. So my male to female transgender spouse, our 10-year-old son, and I made a trip to Chicago recently with the main purpose of enjoying the city and celebrating a family member at a graduation party outside of Chicago in Indiana, about a 1-hour drive from the city. This was our first flight together as a family since my spouse came out to me a year and a half ago. And to provide you with an image of what you might see if we were standing next to each other, my spouse is almost passable. She has dropped to a size 6, dresses nicely, jeans and a cute top usually, has developed breasts and wears classy makeup and painted nails, and she has always had curly, dark, shoulder-length hair. She looks good. And, at this point, I think only the masculine features of her face and her voice are what give her away or make people notice. She is under 6 feet tall, so she kind of blends in height-wise. But even with all of this, yes, it is clear that I am a cisgender woman, and next to me stands a transgender woman. Preparing for this trip took on a longer checklist than other trips. So before transition, it used to just be counting how many pairs of underwear and socks you needed, in relation to how long you're going to be gone on the trip. I like to throw in extra pairs to be safe. But now preparing means that we are looking up if TSA allows pepper spray in checked luggage, something I never dreamed of needing on any trip, even when I flew alone. So for anyone outside the U.S., TSA stands for Transportation Security Administration, which includes the people in blue uniforms who will verify your travel documents and handle the screening process. And good news, yes, pepper spray is permitted in checked luggage within the U.S., so we checked one for myself and one for my spouse, which we then carried with us during our entire trip. All right, let's talk about security screening once you get to the airport. Security screening is stressful and anxiety-inducing for any transgender person, mainly because of the body scanner. A TSA agent inputs your gender, and the machine decides if you are, for lack of better words, hiding something, because only a relatively small percentage of transgender people undergo surgery for various reasons. I'm referring to what's known as bottom surgery. For our trip, my spouse is lucky to have a child under 12 traveling along because we can forgo the body scanners and walk through the metal detectors as a family. She was visibly relieved and put at ease. My spouse had to go to Texas for work a few months ago, and that experience of going through the body scanners and dealing with pat-downs was difficult. She returned home very upset. Not only that, but traveling alone for work, even though she met up with coworkers on the other side, it was very anxiety-driven for her. That was her first work trip, as a transgender person. She went to a restaurant but didn't use the bathrooms at all, and she told me that she kept her back against a wall so she could see, everything that was happening in the restaurant and wouldn't be surprised by somebody maybe coming up behind her. Back to the scanners. Body scanners are subjective, and screenings often put transgender people into dangerous situations where they can be groped inappropriately or even worse. If you are transgender, please avoid private screenings if they are offered, and stay where there are people and cameras, just for your safety. Before I go into our trip, I just want to offer up some tips for traveling as a transgender person, and I want to share these 5 tips from Aria Saeed. She is the founder and executive director of the Transgender District in San Francisco, and offered these tips in an article that was published on kayak.com. And I will, of course, include the article link and other links in the episode description about travel safety. The first tip that she gives is consider enrolling in TSA PreCheck, or better yet, global entry. In most cases, you'll go through a metal detector and can avoid misgendering and, personal safety issues, plus shorter lines, less travel anxiety, less time for people to sort of stare at you and formulate their strange opinions. So my spouse has not done this yet, but I am sure that she will. The second tip is consider traveling to LGBTQ plus friendly cities. I will include some lists in the episode description, as well as a video about a transgender person who really wanted to see Dubai. She made it there and then was denied entry. And I am including that video because it's just good to be aware that this sort of, discrimination happens. And as much as any of us wish that we could visit certain places, we need to stay safe, transgender or not. In April of this year, Equality Florida issued a travel advisory. Can you believe that? And let me quote, "Warning of the risks posed to the health, safety, and freedom of those considering short or long-term travel or relocation to the state," end quote. And it really shatters my heart that this kind of warning ever had to be considered and issued in our country. So that link to that advisory will also be in the description. Third tip, if you are traveling solo, make sure that you stay in a hotel and share your location with friends and family. So this goes for anyone, but especially as a transgender person. Share your location, check in now and then. And I would say that at least one solid family member or friend has an itinerary or contact info to know some of the places that you're staying just in case. Fourth tip, be a student of the world. I'm going to read from Aria's article verbatim here. So she writes, as trans people, we have to be cognizant of local customs, traditions, and expectations of us as we travel, especially the gendered norms and customs. Knowing those expectations will ensure greater safety as you move through the world. End quote. She also notes hand gestures in one country might mean something different elsewhere, or maybe you need to cover up or take your shoes off someplace. So do your homework before you go anywhere. Personally, I like to make sure that I know country codes and how to dial outside or within a country, and I like to know what the local version of 911 or an emergency number is in a certain place. Even if you're just staying within the United States, it's just good to know where the local police station is or the local hospital is, or that kind of thing. And I know that our phones do a lot of this for us, but it doesn't hurt to know this information beforehand. So again, it's just all about staying safe. Fifth tip, learn words and phrases to make your need for accommodation easier. If you are going to a different country, you may want to learn how to ask for certain things like bathrooms or a pharmacy or how to do a variety of things. And I usually just write down phrases in case my phone dies and there's no service. I'm old school about some things. I also save screenshots of maps and locations in case I lose service. Even if I'm going to someplace within the country, I just like to take a screenshot. So if anything happens, I kind of have a reference point and I won't get lost. All right, so back to our trip. We were in Chicago for 4 days, 3 nights. Uneventful flight there. We had assigned seating together, and I am very aware now of my surroundings at all times. And I've learned to avoid eye contact when I sense that anyone is judging the transgender person in the room. When we got to Chicago, we grabbed a quick bite to eat along the river in the Loop area at a place where you choose your own seating. This woman and man sat down, and then the man suddenly realized that he was sitting near a transgender woman and got up and moved tables to the other side of the restaurant. And that was the only negative situation in Chicago that we felt. And honestly, we're fine if people get up and move and do it quietly. I am happy to avoid any transphobic individuals, so thank you for moving for us. So Chicago was great. Love the architecture, love the museums, and we really lucked out with the weather. And I'm so sorry. I know that there's a lot of smoke from wildfires right now. The next part of our trip, going to Indiana, was a bit anxiety-driven. We'd never been to Indiana, so we know that our family is accepting, and I had a feeling that the people that they knew would be fine with a transgender person at this party that we attended. But Indiana as a whole was a scary idea. We stopped for a quick bite to eat, and one thing that always happens at restaurants is that bathroom panic. My spouse kept an eye on the bathroom and used it as soon as she noticed it was empty. But let me tell you something that I never imagined would put me at ease more than I thought it would. We rolled into this town in Indiana. Granted, it's a college town, and we had enough time to take a look at the very cute downtown area. And it is Pride Month, and one shop had Pride items in their storefront window, and I think I let out a vocal sigh of relief. It is amazing how tense it can feel to travel now, constantly thinking about safety. I've never thought about safety this much in my life. On the drive to my relative's house, we also saw a house with a pride flag hanging by the porch. Again, another sigh, and the shoulders relaxed. And the party itself was just lovely. Nobody batted an eye. We had a good time. But as soon as we left town, it was gas up and get out of here, because we understood from people at the party that other surrounding towns were not as welcoming to the LGBTQ plus community as this small college town is. And that's too bad, because we are fun people, so you guys are missing out. So for the flight home, we did not have the same row to sit in together. It was 2 seats in one row and 1 seat in the row ahead. So I sat next to our son, and my spouse sat in the row in front of me. And here I am talking about not being judgmental, but I admit, of all the people that my spouse could be seated next to, it was a gentleman with a motocross shirt. Very hypocritical of me, but my first thought was, oh no, this isn't good. And our flight had been delayed a few hours, so it was 11 p.m., and I thought, I can't sleep. I need to make sure that everyone stays safe, and this doesn't become another one of those crazy videos that we've been seeing of people fighting on planes. So I kept my eye on the two of them between the space in the seats. And the gentleman kind of looked over a few times at my spouse, but never said anything. So again, thanks for not saying anything. And once the flight took off, practically fell asleep on my spouse's shoulder. So I did stay awake the whole flight though. But again, I appreciate the silence versus someone making transphobic comments or anything else that could happen. And who knows, this person might not even have been transphobic. That's just a horrible assumption on my part. And that's the main point, though, about traveling with a transgender family member, is that you are always on edge. You are concerned for your safety and your family's safety, for your transgender relatives' safety. You do your homework. You take all the extra steps to stay ahead of any potential issues that could arise, like packing that pepper spray, just in case. It just gives you an extra sense of security. And in the end, the three of us had a great time. So, sure, I had to sneak in some naps when we got home to recover from all of this worrying, but it almost felt like a normal trip together. And I just hope that the more people see a family like ours out and about, the less anyone will even notice or care. We are a pretty typical family, even if one of us is transitioning. So until next time, do your homework and get out there. Explore your world.